Willow Creek was supposed to be paradise. Perfect lawns, white fences, neighbors who waved like clockwork. But when one woman's obsession with control went too far, paradise became a crime scene. The moment she tripped my pregnant wife on the sidewalk, she didn't just break the rules. She exposed a secret that would bring the FBI crashing down on our quiet suburban street. What happened next turned the neighborhood's queen of order into its ultimate criminal. Hey everyone, before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more unbelievable real-life HOA and Karen stories. Each week, we uncover the shocking truths hidden behind perfect neighborhoods and smiling faces. Hit that bell icon so you never miss what happens when ordinary people push back against extraordinary cruelty. The morning started like any other in Willow Creek. The kind of suburb that looked like it had been printed out of a real estate brochure. Every fence gleamed white, every lawn manicured to perfection, and every house painted in shades approved by the HOA. People there didn't just follow rules, they worshipped them. Ethan Cole and his wife, Marisol, had moved there 2 years ago, chasing quiet weekends and Safe Street. He was quiet, polite, the type who waved to neighbors, paid HOA fees on time, and never questioned authority. To everyone else, Ethan was a mild-mannered software engineer. No one knew the truth, that for the past 3 years, he had been working undercover for the FBI. His assignment: investigate suspicious money movements buried inside suburban homeowner associations. He had built his cover perfectly. The helpful neighbor who fixed printers, volunteered for landscaping days, and kept his lawn greener than anyone else's. But everything changed on one bright afternoon. Marisol walked 12 paces ahead of him that day, her hands holding a brown paper bag and a folded ultrasound photo. She was 6 months pregnant, glowing and laughing about baby names when the red blazer appeared. Karen Davenbrook, the self-proclaimed queen of Willow Creek. Her presence was unmistakable, a clipboard under one arm, lips pressed into a line so sharp it could cut glass. Karen didn't move aside. She turned slightly, planted her heel, and extended one leg across the narrow sidewalk, a motion so small, so practiced, it almost looked accidental. Marisol didn't see it. Her foot caught. The bag flew. The ultrasound fluttered into the air. Then came the sound that Ethan would never forget, the dull, terrible thud of her body hitting the concrete. The world narrowed to a single heartbeat. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, scanning her breathing, her pulse, her abdomen. His training screamed for calm, but his heart broke through protocol. His wife's skin was pale, her breath shallow, and a bright scrape ran across her arm. Karen's voice cut through the silence like a blade. People like you should be more careful. Sidewalk etiquette must be respected. Ethan didn't respond. He pressed 2 fingers to his smartwatch. 3 seconds, a signal only a few people in the world would recognize. A faint blue chevron blinked once on his wrist. A silent alarm sent directly to a federal receiver miles away. Around them, neighbors gathered. Mrs. Patel, the kindly woman from down the block, dropped her grocery bags and rushed over. Logan, the teenage skateboarder, stopped mid-roll and held up his phone. "I got the whole thing," he stammered, shaking. "She tripped her on purpose." Karen's smile was cold and perfect. She raised her clipboard like a shield. "Sidewalk Usage Regulation 14C," she began, as though the words could wash away the act. But the sound of sirens in the distance told a different story. Within minutes, the street was flooded with flashing lights. Paramedics knelt beside Marisol, their hands steady as they checked for signs of trauma. The rhythmic chirp of a fetal heartbeat echoed faintly through the monitor. Relief hit Ethan like a wave. The baby was alive. Karen's expression twisted into irritation. "They can't park there," she snapped, pointing at the ambulance wheels resting on the grass. "That's an HOA violation." Even then, her obsession with control outweighed her humanity. As Marisol was lifted into the ambulance, Ethan turned to Karen. His voice was calm, his eyes unreadable. "You'll provide me with the footage from the lamppost camera," he said. Karen smirked. That footage is private HOA property. You can submit a request. The board will review it in 30 days. Ethan looked at her clipboard, at the way she hid behind paperwork. Then I'll show the paramedics the ultrasound in 30 days, he said softly. Karen scoffed and scribbled on her form. You'll receive a violation for littering, she added, pointing to the crumpled ultrasound sleeve near the curb. Ethan picked it up, slid it into his wallet, and said nothing. But inside, a silent fury was building. Not just for his wife, for every petty injustice this woman had inflicted on her neighbors. He had seen enough tyranny hidden behind HOA bylaws to recognize something darker. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was a gatekeeper protecting something she didn't want anyone to find. That night, as the neighborhood slipped into its artificial quiet, Ethan opened his laptop. Lines of code reflected in his eyes as he tunneled into the HOA's private security system. Cameras, emails, and transaction logs flickered across the screen. One pattern stood out: large payments disguised as beautification fund transfers. The recipient, Davenbrook Enhancement Partners, a company registered under Karen's husband's name. Ethan leaned back in his chair. His pulse slowed. The act that had nearly cost his unborn child's life wasn't random. It was arrogance, the kind that grows from power and guilt. He pressed a key and sent an encrypted message. Echo to Magnolia Base. Confirming breach in Willow Creek HOA. Possible laundering route active. Requesting local staging cell. The response came seconds later. Magnolia copies. Eyes on the street. Ethan closed the laptop and stared out the window. Across the street, Karen stood on her porch, phone in hand, the porch light cutting her face into shards of red and white. He knew then, what had started as an act of cruelty on a sidewalk was about to become the end of her empire. And as he watched her vanish into her house, he whispered to himself, "You tripped the wrong family." Night descended on Willow Creek with unsettling precision. Every porch light blinked on at the same time, every sprinkler hissed to life in perfect synchronization. The community prided itself on its rhythm, a controlled pulse of suburban harmony that disguised the darker truth simmering beneath the surface. Ethan Cole sat in his study, the only window in the house still glowing. His wife was safe at the hospital under observation, and he'd told the doctors he'd be back at dawn. But sleep wasn't an option. The unease that had followed Karen's deliberate cruelty had turned into a mission, one he couldn't ignore anymore. On the surface, the HOA was just another layer of neighborhood order. But Ethan had seen enough from behind the Bureau's eyes to know that some associations were fronts, shells for money laundering, tax evasion, or even narcotics distribution. The sheer amount of control these organizations had over their residents made them perfect hiding spot. And Karen Davenbrook ran this one like a queen who feared dethronement. He opened his encrypted laptop and began tracing financial record. Every resident's monthly fee passed through the same funnel, the Willow Creek Beautification Fund. From there, the transactions split into two streams: routine maintenance payments and a series of irregular wire transfers made to a company registered as Davenbrook Enhancement Partners. The name alone made his stomach tighten. It wasn't just corruption, it was a pipeline. Every payment disguised as a community improvement expense led to the same post office box registered under Karen's husband, Douglas Davenbrook, a man Ethan had never seen, but who neighbors described as quiet and busy with business trips. The numbers told a different story. Nearly $500,000 had been routed out of the HOA's account in 2 years. The pattern matched other associations Ethan had investigated: small, consistent transfers spaced perfectly to avoid detection, always accompanied by invoices for landscaping, concrete ceiling, or playground renovations that never happened. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the digital spiderweb glowing across his screen. There it was, the same network signature the Bureau had flagged months ago in another city. A buried narcotics distribution system disguised under civic normalcy. Ethan pressed his comm device and whispered, "Magnolia Base, this is Echo." I've got confirmation of asset bleed in Willow Creek HOA. Source Davenbrook Enhancement Partners. Requesting observation authority. The reply came seconds later, sharp, confident, and professional. Copy echo. You're greenlit for field surveillance. Maintain cover. Local staging unit en route. Keep it domestic until we validate the thread. He closed his laptop and stepped out into the night. The air was thick with the smell of fresh-cut grass and artificial calm. Every house on the block looked perfect, but perfection had a way of hiding rot. Across the street, the Davenbrook home stood like a monument to order. Immaculate lawn, polished brass numbers, and a banner in the window that read, "Community is compliance." Karen's version of morality printed in vinyl. He crossed the street, his steps steady, his movements ordinary. To any neighbor watching, he was just another homeowner adjusting a sprinkler. But the lamppost near Karen's house wasn't his destination, it was his key. Weeks earlier, during a volunteer landscaping event, Ethan had quietly installed a repeater chip at the base of that same lamppost, a piggyback transmitter designed to access and mirror data from connected networks. The HOA surveillance system ran through a small central hub located inside the clubhouse, but the lamppost cameras relayed data through a shared line. If he could tap in, he could see everything Karen wanted to keep hidden. He crouched at the base of the post and unscrewed the metal shroud, his movements methodical and calm. Inside, a tangle of wires blinked faintly. He attached a small silver device the size of a USB stick. It chirped once, a faint, polite tone only he could hear through his earpiece. "Magnolia Base, this is Echo," he whispered. "Lamppost feed cloned. Requesting scrape for last 10 hours. Prioritize motion triggers near residence 14C. The voice in his ear responded instantly. "Copy that, Echo. We have your signal. Confirming data stream." He tightened the panel, wiped the metal clean, and stood. Just across the street, Karen had appeared on her porch, cell phone to her ear, pacing like a restless warden. Even from a distance, Ethan could read the tension in her body language. The sharp gestures, the clipped pacing, the occasional glance toward the streetlight. She knew something. Or worse, she knew someone. Back inside his house, Ethan monitored the live feed as it populated with motion data. The lamppost cameras, porch cams, and HOA security nodes came online one by one. Soon, the entire street unfolded in front of him, a grid of surveillance that Karen had been using to watch her neighbors. But what caught his eye wasn't the footage itself, it was the network traffic buried beneath it. One IP address repeated over and over again, tunneling through a VPN node located in El Paso. Ethan's heart rate quickened. That location had appeared before in a series of cartel-linked financial transfers. This wasn't just embezzlement, it was a drug pipeline using HOAs as financial laundering hubs. The cursor blinked on his screen, waiting. He typed, "Magnolia, confirm parallel hits on El Paso node 472 Delta. Possible narcotics laundering via HOA network." "Confirmed," came the reply. "Maintain eyes. Tactical team forming. Proceed soft." He watched as the network map expanded, tracing a chain of accounts that stretched from suburban HOA boards across the state into offshore holdings. At the center of it all, Karen Davenbrook's digital signature. By 10 p.m., he saw the headlights of a black SUV glide slowly down the street with its lights dimmed. It stopped at the Davenbrook residence, the rear gate labeled, "Maintenance Access Only." The driver backed the vehicle into the yard. The lamppost camera caught everything. 2 men stepping out, both wearing work boots, both carrying heavy duffel bags. Douglas Davenbrook emerged from the house, unlocked a side hatch, and helped them load the bags into a basement entrance hidden beneath the deck. Ethan froze the frame. The heat signature was unmistakable, dense, rectangular objects radiating thermal energy. Crate. Possibly narcotics. He activated his mic, Magnolia Base, visual confirmation. Subsurface chamber under residence 14C. Heavy package movement confirmed. Request tactical prep. Copy Echo, came the reply. Transitioning from surveillance to containment. Hold visual. Operation window opens at dawn. Ethan leaned back, his eyes burning from the screen's glow. Outside, the neighborhood slept peacefully, unaware of the rot spreading under its lawns. Every streetlight shimmered like a secret. Every sprinkler sounded like static on a wire. He thought of Marisol lying in a hospital bed, her hand on her belly, unaware that her fall had triggered the unraveling of a criminal empire. He thought of the ultrasound folded in his wallet, the tiny heartbeat that had survived cruelty. And he thought of Karen, standing smugly behind her clipboard, believing that her rules made her untouchable. Ethan whispered to himself, "You built your kingdom on fear, Karen. Let's see how it handles the truth." He sent one final encrypted ping to the bureau. Echo to Magnolia. Network map cloned. Node infiltration complete. Standing by for green light. The reply came seconds later. Copy Echo. Tactical staging cell operational. We move at sunrise. Ethan shut off the monitor and looked out at the neighborhood one last time. The illusion of perfection glowed softly in the streetlights, but beneath the lawns the foundations were cracking. And in just a few hours, the FBI would arrive to finish what Karen started with a single cruel step. Dawn crept over Willow Creek like nothing had changed. Birds chirped, sprinklers hissed, and porch lights blinked out one by one. The neighborhood, polished and perfect, looked exactly as it always had, but to Ethan Cole, it now resembled a stage set about to collapse under its own weight. He'd been awake all night, his eyes burning from staring at monitors, cross-checking surveillance feeds, and decoding data streams. He'd found everything he needed, proof of an active narcotics distribution network hidden beneath the illusion of suburban order. Now the operation had to move before that network vanished. At 6 a.m., his secure line buzzed. Magnolia Base to Echo. Authority granted. Operation Willow Creek is live. The message was short, clinical, and heavy. He rose, slipped on his jacket, and looked once at the hospital bracelet looped around his wrist, a reminder of why this wasn't just another mission. The bruise on his wife's arm, the ultrasound folded in his wallet, the sound of Karen's voice mocking them on that sidewalk, all of it had built to this morning. Outside, the neighborhood glowed in early gold. He noticed how every house had its own little story, bikes in driveways, garden hoses coiled neatly, flags fluttering in sync. The illusion of peace was powerful, but illusions crumble when real authority arrives. He parked his truck near the cul-de-sac gazebo, the one Karen had turned into her self-declared HOA command post. From the outside, it looked harmless. Fairy lights twinkling, a corkboard filled with flyers about noise complaints and lawn mowing schedules. But Ethan knew better. Hidden inside that gazebo was the network hub, a router blinking too fast for normal bandwidth, carrying encrypted data packets that connected directly to the Davenbrook home. He knelt beside the power panel, pretending to fix a wire, and slid a fiber sniffer into the Ethernet port. Within seconds, the device lit up. Lines of traffic streamed through his earpiece. HOA emails, bank transfers, member databases, even messages tagged Board Confidential. Half of those data packets rerouted through the same El Paso VPN node he'd traced the night before. It was all the confirmation he needed. The Davenbrooks weren't just laundering money through their HOA. They were routing cartel communications through it. A low hum broke his focus. He glanced up to see a pair of utility trucks rolling down the street. Plain white, no markings. To anyone else, they were harmless maintenance crews. To Ethan, they were the first wave of the FBI's covert staging team. Agents disguised as contractors, landscapers, joggers, and delivery drivers were quietly surrounding the block. Echo to Magnolia, he whispered, pressing his comm device. Local units in position. Targets 14C and 14B confirmed. Secondary assets moving. Copy Echo, replied Special Agent Harlow, his bureau handler. Maintain cover. We're a go for parallel triangulation. Keep the neighborhood asleep until we knock. Ethan smiled faintly at the phrasing. Until we knock. In his line of work, that usually meant until we break everything open. Through the lamppost feed, he watched Karen's house. The blinds were drawn, but a faint glow pulsed inside, someone pacing with a phone. Douglas's black SUV was